everybody. I'm back with Dr. Charles Herron, and what a fantastic response we've had from the first video. You guys overwhelmingly supportive of the doc and his stories, and when we turned the camera off last time, he just started telling them just more and more stuff. I wish we'd have just left the camera on, but everything's a story. Every photo, everything is a story with him, and so it's he's brought all these volumes of things. He's got stacks of photos, and so finally I just told him, Doc, how do you eat an elephant? He said, one bite at a time. So the first bite is a series of notes he made, things that they did not tell you at Fort Sam Houston Medical Center. Explain what that is.
Well, all medical personnel, at least for the Vietnam experience, you went to Fort Sam Houston for a month. They told you how to march and how to dress right and do all these other sort of things, but you really didn't get into the nitty-gritty of what happens when you're in the field and in combat. Mm-hmm. In fact, much of my thing for anybody in the military or contractors like yourself is before combat and after combat. Mm-hmm. I don't care, and as far as the combat goes, I'm not talking about a probe on the perimeter, or the perimeter people get it, but as far as maybe a rocket coming in or a mortar coming in, everything like that, I'm talking about the nitty-gritty of the confusion, the noise, the fear of combat itself, and what your whole thought processes and experience from life, is before combat and after combat. Yep. Your whole perspective. You can call it seeing the elephant or whatever, but and you euphemistically they say losing your charity, whatever you want to call it, but it's a whole different mindset. Yep. Afterwards. So that's what I'm saying here. The things they didn't teach you in Fort Sam Houston. Mm-hmm. And the purpose of the military basically is to destroy the enemy and the enemy's capacity to destroy you. We nowadays can't use the word kill people in this sort of thing, because that's not okay. Oh, yeah, you can. Yeah. One way or the other.
Kill people and break stuff.
Right, and it's the military is not to give you a comfortable retirement and teach you a civilian occupation. And I think, and there are exceptions to this, I'm sure, but at least in my military experience, we did not need, we needed the ladies or the females in the back, nurses and everything like that. We didn't need them in active combat units at that time. And I don't know about now. I may get in trouble on that one there.
No. What do you mean you didn't need them?
Well, you didn't. I trying to kill people under our circumstances, where you were living basically in holes in the ground.
Right.
You just didn't need gals with you.
Right.
You really didn't. I mean, and I'm sure there are a lot of gals that can beat me up and everything like that. There's no doubt about it.
We understand.
But as far as the intensity and the depravity and the whatever you want to call it of living out there in the jungle. Now, my thing was the jungle and the mountains, and it was just a mess all the time.
Right.
And this sort of thing there. And the thing from my standpoint was fear, and I'm not joking with you. From the time you got in country until the time you left, I was afraid, I was scared, and this sort of thing. And as a physician, a doctor, general at GMO, you had the guilt of trying to keep people in the field.
Right. That wanted to go home.
We all wanted to go home. I mean, maybe maybe the professional people wanted to stay around, but the majority of us wanted to go, particularly after that first initial combat, when it wasn't John Wayne and all this other sort of thing. You woke up in the morning and it was here all over again, and that sort of thing.
Well, Doc, I use this quote a lot, but Plato said it's easy to get a man to go back to war. It's difficult to get him to go back. You can get him to go to war. Get him to go to war,
but
get him to go back is very difficult.
One way or the other. And my role, as I say, with my guild thing, was keeping young men in combat to get killed or maimed. And the only way you got out of our unit, once you were in the field, in the jungle with us. The only way you got out was to deroast, go home, get transferred to another unit, or go through me, or go through the chaplain, or go through Red Cross, compassionate leave and that sort of thing. And it was just always a struggle to keep people in line in the field with us, because that was the end of the road in many respects, as far as that was where all the things were going on. And if you think of it, for every 11 Bravo, a troop with an M16 looking for bad guys and everything like that, there were, I say, 8 to 10 in the field, living better than they ever had. And, they were worried about their cameras, they were worried about their hi-fi units and everything like that, or the R&Rs. And one thing in particular, I think unique for Vietnam, at least at the time, was the R&R situation, where people would be in combat, and then they would get on a plane, cross an invisible line, go somewhere else, do this, that, and the other, and then 5 to 7 days later have to come back and go out to the field. And a lot of people, to include me, didn't want to go back to the field.
Right.
With the whole post-R&R thing.
And so you guys, most of you know, but R&R means rest and relaxation. Basically, it was a timeout or a break or a short vacation from your post. It was usually close, as he said, in country sometimes, but just a place to get away for a minute. And it's I think it's still thought that it causes more problems than it helps.
Well, it was also known as rape and run, but as far as relieving innertensions.
You're right. You're right.
But anyway, we had that. Now, we've already gone over the year you went to Vietnam, whether you were in I Corps, 2 Corps, 3 Corps, 4 Corps, the unit, the rank, the MOS, and this sort of thing. By TO&E, Table of Organization and Equipment, a battalion at that time was 650 to 750 troops. And we had the 11 Bravos. You had headquarters company, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo companies. And most of your companies by strength were 100 troops up to 125 troops. And you had 4 medics. You had 4 platoons with medics in there. And with the medics in particular, I was a 73100. I did make it through jump school. You had 91Cs, 91Bs, and 91As as far as their training. And most of your 91Cs later would have become physician's assistants now. The physician assistant program was based on Navy corpsmen and Special Forces medics with in-depth training along those lines there. The other aspect was the people you worked with. You had your ARVN, the Army of Republic of Vietnam. You had the Rough Puff, Regional Forces, Popular Forces. You had Kit Carson, the Scouts. You had the Victor Charlie, or Mr. Charles. The thing we would say, Charlie doesn't go on R&R. Charlie doesn't have a PX. And then you had NVA regulars, and we had the Ho Chi Minh Trail.
If you don't mind me interrupting, previously you talked about, we didn't say Charlie, we called him
Mr. Charles.
And could you explain to them why?
Well, there was recently there has been an episode where some people on some television programs were unhappy because we didn't treat certain people who just got blown all to pieces with respect and this sort of thing. You respected your enemy, if you want to call it that, or what you perceived as your enemy, because 20 or 30 years later, I'm wearing clothes made in Vietnam. But you had to respect your enemy. If you ever played down their capacity, particularly for enduring things that we didn't want to endure, and about bringing in equipment, whether it was artillery rounds, rifles, machine guns, the whole thing that they went through. I mean, you just had to respect your enemy. You didn't necessarily have to like him, but you had to respect what these people were going through.
Yeah.
And I know one of the things, I never experienced it myself, but down at Repo Depot, when somebody got to Vietnam, was going to be sent out with a unit. They're in Saigon and down there in the base areas. They would show our troops how the Vietnamese, VC, whoever you want to call them, could slip through triple concertina wire, tanglefoot, all this other stuff with barbed wire we would set up. But these people could shimmy and get through all of these impediments that we would put up, and so you need to stay awake all night long.
Yeah, right.
When we were taught
right.
along those lines.
So respect your enemy.
Respect your enemy.
I think a lot of times, I noticed this in Iraq, people would make fun of the enemy and belittle them, I think, as a way just to be lazy, because if we thought they were incompetent, then we didn't have to train as hard or prepare as hard or anything like that.
Well, it's just amazing. Everybody's experience on these circumstances is different. As far as I mentioned to you earlier, imagine a beach 1,000 miles long, 100 miles wide, and I'm a single grain of sand. That's my combat experience. I'm not a professional or anything like that, but it's how I perceived it. Everybody perceived it differently along those lines there. I hate to be kind of discombobulated here, but anyway.
You're not more discombobulated than I am.
Well, anyway, on this page, we're talking about triple concertina, which I just mentioned, tanglefoot, foo gas, which was aerosolized gas that they blow in caves and everywhere like that. The triple wire.
No, tell me about foo gas. I've never heard that.
Foo gas was aerosolized gasoline. And I think the bomb of all mother of bombs or something.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, it sucks all of the air out.
Gotcha.
All the oxygen out. And I've never seen it up close. Just heard about it. As far as our things, we had we didn't have the improvised explosive devices like they've got now. We had things like tripwires or command detonated grenades, punji stakes, and this sort of thing, and feces coated with the punji stakes, feces coated bamboo. We had toe poppers and bouncing betties, and then we had the two targets on any platoon would be the RTO, the radio operator, and the brown bar commando, bless his heart, the second lieutenant, or maybe the captain, and get them in and blow them away that way.
Hold on a second. So you said bless his heart on the butter bar lieutenant. Explain that.
Well, second lieutenants, particularly in the Marine Corps, I understand, in combat, life expectancy wasn't very long. And because they were up in front leading, follow me and all that sort of thing there, as opposed to delegating stuff. And so second lieutenants and RTOs were high priority targets in any situation, whether it's Army, Marine Corps.
Have you ever trained with John Farnham by any chance? I can't remember.
Not that I know of.
Well, he was a second lieutenant in Vietnam, and out of his OCU class, only one other guy made it out of Vietnam.
It was basically quite short lifespan many times.
Yeah.
When we were told on that. As we're going through here, we talk about our radios were line of sight radios. We're not good in the mountains, and we were in the mountains. And so you had to relay from one mountain top to the other, and you always had to have batteries. I understand in Afghanistan batteries were a problem too. And we had airstrikes, and with airstrikes you would pop smoke. You would ask the incoming aircraft to identify smoke, and you had yellow, white, red, purple, and green. And because you didn't pop smoke and say, just come on in, you let them identify it. Otherwise, the other side had their smoke too.
Yeah.
And let's get that off there. The thing, we had rules of engagement. And ROE, it was one of these things you could fight to the top of the hill, but you better not go on the other side of that tree because it's in another country, even though there's nobody out there. These imaginary lines and this rules of engagement have always been a problem, I think, for somebody actually in the combat.
Yeah.
And it was because you'd have their sanctuaries, their invisible borders, and I know when we were out in the Ashaw in particular, we were looking toward the west with starlight scopes at night in these mountains, and you could see the other team forming up over there, and you weren't supposed to do anything about it at the time. Because if you asked to get permission to shoot or fire, many times the people knew you were coming before you knew you were going.
Right.
And many times my statement was that, and the only thing that knew ahead of time were the flies, because the flies were always waiting for us. So we had Mike Forces, we had Air America, we had the Studies and Observation Group there. And
do you want to talk about any of those?
Well, I think a lot of that is beyond my pay grade.
Okay.
We did have Air America. We had Air America in silver helicopters. When we were in the ASHA, the Mike Forces would go in, and one of our officers had been in the Mike Force, and they went in and tried to destroy the sanctuary complexes. On Studies and Observation Group, that's totally beyond my pay grade as far as everything that they went into. As far as activities go and this sort of thing, we had mad minutes. And mad minute would be an appointed minute sometime between about midnight and daybreak, 4 o'clock in the morning, where you would stand up and shoot off into the distances. We were generally on mountain ridges and that sort of thing, hopefully throwing anybody out there off guard. And after we had a mad minute, one of my aide men would have to clean my M16 because, as I told you earlier, I didn't know how to do it. We did have one guy, though, bless his heart, who during this threw a grenade and wanted to see if it went off. It did go off, and he caught a piece of shrapnel right here.
Oh, he watched.
He watched his grenade go off, which is not a good thing to do, and got a piece of shrapnel right here by the ear parotid gland. It gave him a facial paralysis, and I guess he got to go home after that, so he didn't stay home with us. But I don't recommend throwing grenades and looking to see if they'll go off. Then you had H&I fire all night long, where the 105. If you were semi-close to the coastline, you had 105s, 155s, and on one fire base we had self-propelled 175s, which shoot forever, I guess. But out in the mountains where we were, our artillery, we had generally 6 tubes of 105. Mm-hmm. And they would shoot randomly, and you then had recon by fire. The other phenomena for air assets was light team and heavy team. And a light team was these people, incredibly something. I don't know what, bless their hearts, but they were flying Loaches, and they would be the bait. And then you would have the gunships and the Cobras waiting off station, and if they got shot at, the heavy fire team would come in, and you would see that particularly with the Cobras, the Gatling gun or the gun up in the weapon area, the red fire, and then you have the green tracers going back up. And at one time when we were on the coast, we had the C-47 Puff, the Magic Dragon, with his Gatling gun. And we had arc lights, B-52 raids, and sky spots, which an aircraft would come at a predetermined coordinate, and they drop their ordnance on it. One time they apparently blew up Firebase Birmingham on Highway 547 there, and had some. The only thing more dangerous than enemy fire is friendly fire.
Yep.
And
it's far more accurate.
Right, one way or the other. And, we had indirect fire would have been 60s, 81s, they had 82s, and 4-point deuce mortars. Direct fire was 105s, 155s, 175s. And you always hoped that whoever fixed the rounds, particularly with mortars. I don't know you had that many short rounds with direct fire, but you wanted that mortar to go up and go out and far away, or you had a short round, and that's when everybody was running for something.
Right.
The interesting thing about all of our ammunition that I saw, it was made at Milan Army Ammunition Plant.
And explain to them why that is ironic to you.
Well, I used to say I'm closer to home right now than I've been in a long time, because we used all the bunkers, all the boxes to make bunkers or make furniture. In every platoon, you had an artist. David Trout was our artist.
So what he's talking about, where they mash these rounds together, is not your hometown, but very close to your hometown here in West Tennessee.
Milan, Tennessee. I'm sorry, Milan, Tennessee. Where people I knew were working and making these things, and we were hoping they were happy and making good rounds and that sort of thing. But we would take the wooden boxes and use them as sandbag equivalents, or build tables, or benches and everything like that. And so we just say it was just, I felt so much close. You just see MMAAP and you just kind of felt homesick,
So the Milan Arsenal, it's not in operation anymore, is it?
I don't know. I think they got traded and done everything too. I really.
Yeah.
I really don't know.
I don't think we need a lot of conventional stuff anymore.
No, one way or the other. Speaking of artillery and everything like that, with explosions, you had the heat and the light first when you were getting hit, and then you had the shock waves, and you added you up. If people got killed, even though you knew them and cared about them, everything, they would swell up pretty bad. S4 would. Basically, if you were going on an assault and it was planned, you had body bags. If things were going on and it wasn't planned, or whatever you want to call it, you had to wrap the remains up in ponchos, and that left a great deal to be desired, and that sort of thing. But it was always a mess to put somebody, or parts of somebody. The thing about, I classified myself basically as a human maintenance person. I won't say janitor or whatever, but it was my role to clean up the messes in one form or fashion. And it was really always a real situation. Getting folks that you knew back.
Right.
There was a statement on the thing, remains not suitable for viewing, and we had a lot of that by definition, and that sort of thing there. Here is, let's see, we'll save that a little bit. We had, nobody wanted to be there. Nobody, to include me. And to get out of the field, troops would drink paddy water or stream water, and that would give you diarrhea. You would get rat bitten. And the things with rats is that we were in the jungle, many times up on mountains and everything like that. So the food you didn't eat, you threw out on the perimeter. Well, that attracted the rats. And Charlie Beckwith used to say that the rats were big enough to fuck a chicken flat-footed. I hope that didn't go over too well. But anyway, we had big rats. And you slept with your clothes on at night, your boots on. You slept with your hands inside your pants. Not that you're playing with yourself or anything. You just didn't want to get your hands bitten. At least I didn't. But if you did get rat bitten, it was good for 14 days of ghost time.
Okay, what is ghost time?
It means that you weren't out on the perimeter getting shot at and possibly getting killed. You had 1 day to go back to the rear. You had 12 days to get the required shots, and then 1 day to come back to us. And so we had that. We had sometimes on assaults, and we know we were going, people would take insect like crickets and put it in their ear canals, and it would swell up and cause all sorts of problems. Needless to say, they didn't come back to the field. We had two rather adventurous and somewhat stupid individuals who threaded leeches up their penises. And I don't know where they are in the world today, of gender, whatever. But they didn't come back.
Oh, gosh.
One with the other. We basically had two types of leeches. We had aquatic leeches that were in the streams. We had the terrestrial leeches that were on the bushes. And I always said it was so psychologically castrating to get in a stream, wade across a stream, and have a leech much larger than your male appendage come at you.
Well, so I have heard that sometimes the soldiers would wear pantyhose to keep the leeches from swimming up their stuff. Is that a rumor, or is that true?
I asked Joe Namath on that. I mean, he played football in pantyhose. Yeah. Joe, don't get me, please. I don't know. I don't think we had pantyhose in that era, did we, or did we?
Yeah,
not with us anyway.
I had literally heard that guys would wear those to keep the leeches off their stuff.
As far as clothing goes, we got uniform changes once a week.
No, I meant like they got mailed from home.
Well, mail from home for us generally had popcorn as stuffing or eating popcorn.
I don't think that would stop the leeches.
No, it wouldn't either. Along those lines. But anyway, people would eat C4 plastic explosives out of Claymore mines and get into trouble, or they wouldn't.
They would eat it?
Yeah, it'd give them a fever and seizures, anything to get out. They wouldn't take their malaria pills, and they'd get malaria. We had basically two kinds of malaria. When we went in country, if I remember correctly, we had falciparum, which was bad, and that was where your chloroquine tablets were all about. And then when we went to I-Corps, we had Vivax malaria, which I think I brought home, which was extremely inconvenient, and there you'd be taking dapazone DDS there. And then sometimes in firefights, people would hold up an arm or a leg and get shot, and in retrospect, I don't blame them. And,
you mean they'd stick one up in the air? Oh, okay.
Yeah, one way or the other. I mean, that's trip home, man. Get out of town. And then we had several people who did self-inflicted gunshot wounds, and generally it was between the great toe and the second toe. And it always was amazing to me that an M16 round would go through there and not tear the whole foot off. I guess it didn't have enough momentum. Needless to say, they didn't come back. And, they wouldn't report skin infections. And, I mean, we had fungus over there that was like corn in Iowa. You could just about hear it grow.
Gotcha.
And we all had some sort of inconvenience.
And so when you say they wouldn't report it till it was really bad.
Right, right. And we really didn't have that much for it anyway. We had griseofulvin and some creams, but none of it was very good. And then here again, let's see, on this, we've got noise. We didn't have ear protection. I think there are all sorts of lawsuits now, but we didn't have ear protection then. We had the confusion. We were dirty, fatigued. We were frustrated. Everything over there at that time was body count. We all went to great deal, anytime there was contact, the first thing they did would bring in the Labrador dogs, the tracker dogs, to try to find bodies. You also had the German Shepherds, which were scout dogs, particularly on patrol, and that sort of thing. Let's see, we'll go into this aspect here. The Army was there for 365 days. The Marines were there for 13 months. We talked about this earlier. The first 90 days, you were FNG, fucking new guy or a cherry. Then you lost your cherry, and you became the meanest mother in the valley. And then under 90, you were short. And I mean, that's when you really got scared, because I saw people get killed the first week. I saw people get killed the last week. Now, when you were short, particularly that last month, the artist drew a go-home calendar for you. It generally was of the female figure, and you would mark off every day. And I'll let you imagine where number 3, number 2, and number 1 was. But those were going home. Those were definitely getting close, going home along those lines there. Now am I too discombobulated?
No.
Okay.
This is fantastic.
Okay.
I have guests all the time that are super discombobulated, so you're keeping it on track for sure.
Well, drugs of choice, if you want to call it that, and please, the officers don't get mad at me.
Recreational drugs of choice.
Right, drugs of choice, right. Officers did their whiskey and some beer. Senior NCOs did some beer and some whiskey. And for your EM, it was beer and marijuana. And when we would come back on the stand downs, the GP medium tents, the liners would be rolled down, and there was enough marijuana rolled up in there to give everybody a high, and that sort of thing. Sometimes you would be out on the fire bases, not very much though, because you could smell it all over everywhere. But right. I remember we were in a bunker. It was dark and everything like that. We were listening to Armed Forces Radio Vietnam. Okay, and we were listening to Grand Ole Opry, and I learned a lot of the songs. Back home again. Grand Ole Opry, and one of my medics came in and he asked me if I wanted to clean the leeches off my M16. And I said, well, not tonight, but I think he had been smoking a little bit.
I think
but not enough to get him home.
Okay, so you didn't have any leeches.
I didn't have any leeches on my M16. And he kind of looked wild-eyed. But, you're right in the middle of nowhere. You're in the dark. There ain't no place else to go. You should let it go. Let it go. Let it go. Let it go 2 times. Okay, the summer of '68, y'all were having all sorts of hell back here with riots and assassinations and everything like that. We weren't doing much better there.
Well, I wasn't going to be around until about 70.
Okay, fair enough. Well, you didn't miss anything, I don't think. But anyway, I mentioned earlier that was really when the 101st, as an identified unit with people who came over and everything like that, everybody was either getting killed, wounded, de-roasting, going home, and everything like that. So we started losing our unit identity. We were getting replacements who were legs, non-airborne qualified, and everything like that, although we didn't, do any jumping in Vietnam, fell out of some helicopters, but didn't do any jumping, and this sort of thing. And so we lost our unit identity. We had McNamara's 100,000, as I mentioned earlier. Their service number was US 67. They were poor whites, Soul Brothers, and Tex-Mex. And they were just rushed them through because they needed boots on the ground or swinging dicks, whatever you want to call it. And also in the summer of '68, black power became a problem. Fragging became a problem. We went from airborne.
But I got to slow you down. So black power and fragging, and so he's talking about the civil rights, the blacks being angry about stuff, and fragging was when they would intentionally injure superior soldiers.
Right, officers in particular.
Officers.
Along those lines. In fact, I had several people told me at point blank that they would kill me when we got back because I kept them in the field. And I always say the second thing I did after I got back was to buy a pistol. First thing was to make sure the equipment worked. But anyway, but we went from airborne to air mobile. And air mobile in the summer of '68 really wasn't sexy enough, so it's now air assault.
Yeah, right.
Air assault and this sort of thing. That's when we started having Article 15s and Article 31s.
Explain those.
These are disciplinary things where you did something you weren't supposed to do and you go before a board. And an Article 15 is kind of whatever, I guess it's just misdemeanor, and 31s they let you go down to LBJ, Long Bend Jail, and down in Tan Son Nhut down in Saigon. And that's when we, as they lost unit identity, we started getting repo depot. You had a lot of shake and bake officers in particular trying to get in and get out. And so along those lines, everything was kind of falling apart.
What year was that?
This is all of '68.
Okay.
I mean, there were different wars.
Yeah,
James, there were
right.
different wars.
Yeah.
And '68 was different from anything else, simply because of Tet, because of what was going on here in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we were all getting letters from home in that our families were being harassed.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing there? Why are you there? And all that other sort of thing. And although I didn't receive one, you started getting Dear John letters and all that, and that's bad for morale and troops. I mean, when I go over, I'm 26. When I come back, I'm 27. I'm an old man compared with these 17, 18, 19-year-old kids or young people and everything like that. And it was just, it was really a mess psychologically as to what all went on.
I'm sure. As far as those Dear John letters, I think what happens now is when a guy gets one of those, all his buddies all give him their girlfriend's or wife's picture, and then he mails all those pictures of all those girls back to his girlfriend and says, "I can't remember which one you are. Could you take your picture out and mail the rest of these back?"
Well, that's group therapy, group. And the thing of it is. With I mentioned guilt earlier, you get a camaraderie that is very intensive.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's awful to see what can happen to people under these circumstances. and that sort of thing there. And I know people back home. I mean, you're way far gone. All that other sort of thing there. Let's go and we've done that. As far as the therapy, I don't know how many tons, if you want to call it that, of penicillin I put in people's butts, but to my knowledge, I never had a penicillin reaction. Wyatt, W-Y-E-T-H, made these Tubexes. You had 600,000 units of procaine penicillin, you had 600,000 units of benzathine penicillin, and you had one Tubex. These were kind of an off-color white, and you had one Tubex which had a gram of streptomycin, and we applied all this stuff liberally. And I know this may sound a little far-fetched, but on the radio I'd get a call, Doc, so-and-so is coming back from R&R. And I said, well, how much will I need? And he said, well, see how he gets off the helicopter. And so he come back to where we were on the fire base. And if he got off pretty good, we just gave him 1.2, 600,000 of penicillin. If he had some help getting off, we gave him 2.4. And then we worked it if he needed a lot of help getting off, which means he had brought home something from somewhere along those lines. And we never had any problems with penicillin allergies. It didn't deter anybody from catching things and bringing them back. But anyway, that's one of those things there. And let's see, we got that. Of course, we had the sulfa drugs and this sort of thing, and we had penicillin. We had two types of penicillin. Supposedly, they were generic, made in Italy or somewhere. One was green, and the other one was orange. I'm sorry, yellow and orange. And they many times came out of you the same way they went in you, which was pretty good in some respects. As far as flora goes, we had triple canopy, and we had big trees and the vegetation and the wait-a-minute bushes, which we talked about, and the elephant grass. And if we had tree burst, with their 82 millimeter mortars, we had not only the shrapnel coming down on us, but we would have the wood splinters and everything like that. You had plenty of flies, and they followed us everywhere, lots of mosquitoes. You had mites, and particularly in June and July of '68, the thing was, there were a lot of arms in these bunkers in the mountains, and as long as the local people, the NVA, was replenishing the vegetation, they weren't seen that well. But if you didn't replenish the vegetation, everything died, and all of a sudden you had a brown spot in the middle of the jungle, and you had all sorts of arms and ammunition in there. And the guys who went in there got scrubbed typhus, which was different. Let's see. We had we've been over the leeches. We had the bamboo viper and the cobras. And the bamboo viper were green, about the size of your middle finger. They were the three-step snake. If you got bitten by that neurotoxin, you're supposed to die real quick. We had the cobras who would look at you, and they would be on the perimeter out after the rats. Here again, they were neurotoxic. And when people come in and tell me they'd been snake bite, I couldn't get them out. I said, you sit down, I'll come back in 30 minutes.
If you're alive.
And if you're dead, it was a snake bite, we'll write you up. And if you're not dead, get back on the perimeter. There's nothing we could do. I hate to be hard and cruel, but there was nothing we could do. We did have one entry, and I had the picture somewhere. I don't know where it is. But it was in November, and we had been pulled back from the jungle from Highway 547, and we were on Highway 1 up above Havon Pass. Now, Havon Pass was, Da Nang was on the south side, we were on the north side of a place called Langko Village. And at Langko and this area, Charger was fixing to go home. We were all going to de-roast and everything like that. And so they pulled us back. We had Langko Village, which now is a 5-star beach resort there. We had 5 villages and 3 bridges. And just north of Langko Village was a little mountain kind of pass thing. Our aid station was one side of the road, and we had a listening post on a mountain or a little hill on the other side. And 2 soul brothers, one with an M60, and 2 soul brothers and a white boy, went up all night long in a gentle rain. They had a landline, and they had trip flares and claymore mines and all this other sort of thing. And about midnight, something rolled up against one of the Soul brothers, and he told the other Soul brother, quit joshing with me and everything like that. And of course the reply was, I'm not messing with you. And it went on a couple more times, and then all of a sudden this thing rolled in on them. Well, we had Army issue flashlights. That's this L-shaped flashlight with a red filter. They turned the lights on. It was in the rain, and here was this somewhere between 16 and 18 foot long rock python. It depended on how much you stretched it as they were pulling it down the hill. Okay. All the claymores went off. All the trip flares went off. The M16s, M60s went off. We lost landline contact with them in the radio. Okay, all night long we waited to be attacked down that path.
Right.
Well, it's still raining very gently. They come down with a rope around this snake's neck. There must have been 250 rounds going through that snake, and not any of those troops got hurt. To this day, I don't know how. But anyway, that's just another snake story.
That's pretty good shooting.
Well, it was. It was. But I didn't check entry and exit. It may have been one round. Who knows? But it makes a good snake story as far as that sort of thing goes there.
That's fantastic.
Let's see, what else? Oh, sea rations. Oh, yes, sea rations.
The food.
The foods, our food. Yes, food. Okay. Can I tell all the story or just this story? Okay, fair enough. If we had privacy stalls around the little boy's bathroom in elementary school, my tour of duty in Vietnam would have been a lot different. As it was, we had the trough that all little boys pee in that constantly ran the water. I don't know who paid the water bill, but the water, you had the trough, and you generally had 3 commodes with no stalls, which meant you never went to the bathroom in elementary school. It didn't get any better in high school. And I've checked around with other people of my generation and everything like that, and McKinsey school system, everything like that. And we all, anyway, to make a long story short, you kept it all day long. You didn't leave it at school. So after a while, when I was about 14 years old, I had hemorrhoids. I passed blood. I thought I was going to die of cancer. The local physician said, I'm not going to die of cancer. He cut it. And then for about 2 weeks, I had to wear Accu-Tacs backwards in PE at school and football practice, which is very challenging, needless to say. Well, I really didn't get visited by hemorrhoids again until jump school. For me, jump school was the last 2 weeks of September in '67 and the first week of October in '67. I had every reason in the world not to like swing landing trainer or parachute landing poles, suspended agony. And when I was sitting on all the little benches, I kept my little butt together and this sort of thing because I had horrible hemorrhoids. And the only thing I had available for treatment was Preparation H, which was available at the PX. And BOQ, we did not have any refrigeration. I did note on the box said remove the aluminum foil, which I did. But as far as the heat goes, I just stuck that up there. Well, I got through jump school. Then we go to Vietnam. If I had only eaten the correct sea rations when I was in Vietnam, I might not have had problems. But now, as an officer and a gentleman and everything like that, I got turkey loaf, I got pound cake, and I got peach slices. If I'd had any sense, I would have eaten ham and beans, and I would have eaten fruitcake. That would have given me roughage, and I would not have had the problem. Now, as it was, I only had a bowel movement every about 3 to 5 days, whether I wanted it or not. It was somewhere between a paver brick and a baby rabbit when it did show up. Now, you've heard of hemorrhoid rosettes. I had the full bouquet with garlands and everything like that. Okay. Now, in Vietnam, we're all young. We're this, that, and the other. If you're airborne, I'll sew you up without this, that, and the other. Yes, I'm airborne, Doc. Sew me up. You know, if you had this, are you airborne? Yes, I'm airborne. I do this, that, and the other. We did all sorts of things with that. So one night we were coming in on a stand down, and I thought if I can just make it to stand down, we did. And I told my medical platoon that I'm going to have my hemorrhoids worked on. And they said, you're going to do it without anesthesia, aren't you? And I said, yeah, I guess I will. And I thought, what have I done?
Airborne.
All the way airborne and that sort of thing. But anyway, we went over to 22nd Surge. One of my classmates from Duke, Joe Sneed, did it, and I got on this thing with the Quonset Hut amphitheater filled with my medical platoon, and 2/3 of the way around, I gave up my wings and asked for anesthesia, but they forgave me anyway.
Wait a second. So your operation is in front of a crowd of people?
Yeah, my medical platoon.
And so he's cutting the hemorrhoid out.
All the way around, 2/3, but I gave up. He made it 2/3 the way around, and I gave up.
And they let you keep your wings.
Yeah, they let me keep my wings. Now, the thing of it is, as I say, now, see, with the food, if I just eat
I can only imagine it was probably like one of the gladiator movies where the crowd's yelling, "Mercy, mercy."
No mercy. No mercy. No mercy. I had my own reputation. That's the only way to tell them. But see, I mean, rations, as I say, if we just done that. Now, we had LERP rations that came in June and July of 68. There were 4 of them. One of them was chili con carne, and the brown beans came out the same way they went in. You had spaghetti that I guess got modified between getting in and getting out. Then we had chicken stew and beef stew, which had these monumental green English peas that definitely came out the same way they went in. I mean, you could see them studded on the side of this. I hate to be crude, y'all, but this is what happened. But now I've got confirmation on this. I have talked to some people who've had the same experience with those English peas. Well, really, I'm serious. This is not fantasy on my part. But each Christmas, in honor of fruitcake, Phyllis and I will buy that a unit of fruitcake, and I'll eat 2 or 3 slices and pass it on somewhere else. But maybe if I just eaten fruitcake,
you think you can make up for it? Have you made up for it yet?
No, I haven't. One person told me that's what you use as a doorstop. So that's
well, a stopper.
One with a tongue. Okay, let's see what we got here. Okay, we did rank and everything, and we had Agent Orange. I don't know what to tell you about Agent Orange.
Well, we have the photos, so we'll just go through the photos.
Well, but Agent Orange is very politicized now. On my 1/3 of what I took care of was skin disease, and this was bacterial, fungal, viral, and everything like that. The other about 1/3 was guts. This was hemorrhoids, diarrhea, and hepatitis. And the people who got hepatitis were generally eating on the local economy in the rear. Not the ones out where we were. I mean, you just didn't eat it. I wasn't exposed to the Vietnamese population very much, except that last month or so. Mm-hmm. And then we had 1/3 was aches and pains in foreign bodies with the splinters and the wait a minute bushes and all this. I've seen a splinter go through a palm, all come out on the top of the wrist and that sort of thing there. And we've as far as you had the diarrhea, constipation. We were all about the same size. We were about 140, 150 pounds. There were no heavy drops. And once a week, a helicopter would come out and drop out a canvas bag with trousers and a canvas bag with tops, and we were all regulars. And this sort of thing. We didn't wear socks. The socks you used to carry your C rations around so they wouldn't make noise. We didn't, on the top of your foot, right where your ankle meets the top of your foot, all of us developed this hyperkeratotic plaque where the tongue of your boot would eat into your skin after a while there. We didn't wear underwear.
Why no socks or underwear?
Well, first of all, it just macerated you. I mean, if you stayed around in wet drawers, it macerated you. Stayed around in wet socks, it macerated immersion foot. You could be in the mountains, because it rained on you and you walked through creeks and springs and everything. There was no way to keep supplied, but you just didn't wear underwear, socks, or anything like that at all. And you slept in your uniform with your boots on. And the weirdest thing, and I was talking with some people about this yesterday and other people, you could be dead tired. I mean, just on this side of being dead, period, and you hear thoop, thoop, thoop. And these would be mortar rounds their side, leaving tubes coming in. And everybody incoming, and you were heading for the bunkers. I was so claustrophobic after the first encounter with mortars, I had to lay on the outside up against the bunker.
Yeah, right.
Because I didn't want the idea of being buried alive. So and that was just the way it was.
Yeah, I get it.
So
I get it.
Anyway,
Anybody that's ever heard those thunks, they know exactly what you mean.
So right here, this is what they didn't teach you at Fort Sam Houston Medical Course.
Well, that's great. That was good. That was good. I knew that would be a good segment, and so we got some other stuff to do. But if you guys have questions for Doc,
oh Lord,
I'll assemble a list of questions as we continue this, and we'll just do a Q&A one time, and we'll see what they can come up with and what your answers might be.
Oh my gosh, I'll try.
I know you will. I know you will.
One way to tell that. I mean, it's the whole thing. We did what we had to do, or what we thought we had to do under the circumstances of the time. And if you weren't there, you wouldn't know.
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, we'll call that one and take a break. We appreciate you guys watching. The good Dr. Charles Herron, good friend, good guy. I hope you've enjoyed this. Again, if you got questions, let us know. Let Doc know what you think about his stories. And
oh God,
if you got questions and all that stuff, we'd love to hear them. Okay. But James Yeager and Doc for Tactical Response reminding you that your responsibility to be ready for the fight never ends.